Just a Bit of Bread by Nyan Sanketsu, Chapter 8, Gimme That Fire. What happens when you place two criminals in the same room? Consider the matter for a moment, dear Tyrion. In one corner we have a young woman who craves power, or rather, the cognition brought on by power, someone who was used and abused all her life, someone who never wants to be weak again. In the other, we have a reformed thief, a man who can steal nearly anything, strength, life, magic, even the very semblance these petty mortals hold dear. Will their goals align? Will they kill one another? Or perhaps, the answer might surprise you. I'm rather curious to see what will happen. Let them be for now. We shall see what happens. After all, everyone has a weakness. Salem. Give me that fire. Team Nebula had a rather interesting first morning, all things considered. Emerald woke and claimed first shower by right of conquest, namely by being quick to rise and quicker still to slam the bathroom door in everyone's face. Warm water washed away every ache and pain brought on by the mess known as initiation, leaving her feeling pleasantly relaxed by the end of it. Bit of a pity, though. She would have liked Naruto to join her, but such was impossible with Blake and Pyrrha literally pounding on the door for their turn. Girls liked their showers, the things one gave up for family. From there, it was a mad scramble down to the cafeteria to get some grub, if only because every other student had the same idea. Hordes of hungry, near-zombified teenagers descended upon the mess hall, pale and grasping for food. Yes, definitely food. Honestly, it nearly became a food fight. Thankfully, the other team seemed too preoccupied with their first meal to give them any trouble, which meant Coco didn't come poking around. Yet, thank heavens for small mercies. So, first lessons? Blake asked over breakfast. Don't know. Naruto tore into another pancake. What's on the agenda? Emerald uttered a jaw-popping yawn as she slumped against the table. It was as good a way to start the day as any. Pyrrha? Let's see. First comes grim studies with Professor Port. There's the resident redhead them through the lesson plan given to them. Then combat classes with Miss Goodwitch. After that, we're free for the rest of the day. She looked up, a faint smile at her lips. Well, it would appear that they're being generous with us, given it's our first day. That's grand. Perhaps we can go into town after. Sure, why not? Naruto perked up, blue eyes flashing with delight. Combat class, you say? Emerald swatted him with a newspaper. No, bad Naruto. Stay. I'm a fox, not a dog, you know. It was too much to hope he would stay out of trouble. Then again, that was why she loved him. Know it or not, he had her heart until death did them part. Naruto would never abandon her, never betray her. He could not be bent. He would not be broken. Many had tried, all had failed. The last group to make such an attempt fared poorly. Her beloved shattered every bone in their leader's body and left them for the grim. The rest he destroyed, all save one. Really? The crown? What were they thinking? Did Jax think them unprepared? Idiots! He glared down at her fist, stiffening a smile as aura flowed across her palm. That said, his sister Gillian had a fascinating semblance, the ability to siphon aura from one individual to the next. Emerald knew it well. It now ran through her veins, Naruto's gift to her. It made her strong, versatile in a world where adaptation was king. She would treasure it always, and only ever use it for his sake, so she swore. But Jax, his semblance died with him in the desert. A power like that was too great a temptation for anyone to hold. Emerald had begged him to let it go, and to her relief he relented. Better to let a wretched ability like that vanish into the void, where no one would be able to use it, just as it should be. The Master Thief blinked. Huh? What is it? Naruto regarded her with keen blue eyes. You looked like you were spacing out for a bit there. No, I'm fine. She settled up against him before he could dwell on it. Nothing to worry about here. I'm where I belong. Munching happily on a fresh slice of toast, Emerald looped an arm around his waist. Naruto laughed and laid his head on her shoulder. She allowed it, content to sit and bask once more in the warm glow of her new family. Her new life had finally begun. Everything was coming up roses now. Nothing could ruin this. Absolutely nothing at all. Monsters, creatures of the night, grim! Professor Port boomed. But I called them prey. Why, when I was but a boy? Emerald's head struck the desk with a resounding smack. Naruto joined hers a heartbeat later. Nope. Blake lasted only a second longer. Pyrrha tried to endure. More fool she. Pyrrha Nichols was beginning to think her team was broken. Not in a bad way, mind you. Naruto and Emerald were delightfully crass, and they didn't give a flying fig about her frame. About her fame. Blake was quiet, but not so much an introvert as one might initially suspect. When she wanted to ask you something, she darn well would. Always full of questions, that one. The Nichols name meant nothing to her either. It didn't mean anything to any of them. They accepted her for who she was, not what she'd done, not who she'd become. She was just plain old Pyrrha to them. She loved that. She loved them for that. Even if she couldn't remember their first class together. Port's class proved mercifully brief. At least she felt it had. Most of the class dozed off within the first 5 minutes, and she'd eventually succumb to it as well. Dear gods, but that man could ramble on. His very voice was a weapon. Was it a semblance? It had to be a semblance. Nothing else could put trained men and women to sleep so easily. By contrast, she found herself looking forward to combat class and all it entailed. Miss Goodwitch certainly looked capable enough, and rather frightening at that. She looked stern, dangerous even. This was a huntress, a weapon of deadly will and power-giving human form. This was what she would be one day, assuming she managed to survive the next 4 years. Somehow, she didn't think her tournament training would stack up well against the hell she was about to see. Welcome, students. Their instructor spoke clearly, her voice ringing out to be heard by all in the room. Pyrrha tried her best not to shrink beneath her gaze. As this is our first class together, I think it best to go over the basics. First, her crop smacked into an open palm. As huntsmen and huntresses, you are expected to uphold the peace. That includes... Blake flicked an ear lazily as she droned on. Pyrrha found her eyes drawn to it, mine listening even as she did her best to pay attention. She truly did, but she found her attention waning and her thoughts wandering all the same. Perhaps she was still numb from listening to Port's lectures. Could it even be called that? He'd most told them stories of his youth. If there had been a lesson in there. Coco nudged her with an elbow. When had she gotten so close? So, any bets on the first match? Sure enough, Miss Goodwitch was looking at their group with a keen eye. Let's see, she began slowly. With Naruto and... Pyrrha looked away. Not me. Cinder, please enter the ring. Pyrrha perked up, realizing she'd been spared. As she turned to find her team leader striding forward, shield strapped to either wrist, there was a high, wild light in his eyes, one she recognized from the Emerald Forest. His blood was up again as he turned to face his opponent. She beheld the very woman who had emasculated Carden just the other night. Carden, who wouldn't be attending Beacon due to his ruined mental state. No, best not think about that. She forced her thoughts elsewhere. Cinder, so that was her name. Coco whistled. This'll be good. No one's seen her fight. Velvet nudged her. Don't be so bloodthirsty. It's just a bit of sparring. Girl, tell that to him. He looks like he wants to eat Cinder up. Same goes for me. Pyrrha's gaze swung back to the combatants. If Naruto's grin reminded her of a tricky fox, then this woman was a viper, coiled and ready to strike. She wore a smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Hips swaying, she didn't so much walk as she did strut into the ring. Not a single movement was wasted. Confidence personified this woman. We meet again. Cinder laughed, and something in her voice sent a shiver racing down Pyrrha's spine. I'm curious to see what you're capable of. You as well. Naruto didn't rise to the bait, but slipped into a stance of his own. I've been waiting to fight you. Don't! A tiny voice shrieked in the back of Pyrrha's head. She wasn't sure why. What was this trepidation she felt? Try as she might, she couldn't put her fingers on it. A strange, nebulous dread wrinkled its way into the pit of her stomach and took root there. She wanted to tell herself that it would be all right. Naruto was strong after all. He might enjoy a good fight from time to time, but surely there wasn't any danger here. Glinda would step in before either took things too far. Would she not? You will fight until one ring out. One of you surrenders, Miss Goodwitch declared, or your aura drops into the red. Prepare yourselves. Cinder raised her arms, and a pair of wickedly curved swords manifested in her palms, one to each hand. They looked sharp and jagged, as though formed from glass itself. She brandished them with deceptive grace. Eyes alight. For a moment, they almost seemed to glow. Pyrrha blinked, and it was gone. Surely that must have been her imagination. It's interesting semblance, Naruto hummed. Cinder tilted her head, ebony hair falling over one golden eye. Aren't you going to use yours? Nah, he waved a hand flippantly and began to circle her. We're all friends here, right? I'll take it easy. How kind of you. Cinder mirrored his motions perfectly, closing the gap. But do be careful. Pride comes before the fall. He scribbed Groom. Know a thing or two about that, do you? Her gaze narrowed, and Glinda's crop slashed through the air. Begin! The circle closed. Cinder lunged, and Naruto moved to meet her, flicking his right arm towards her face in a savage shield bash. She caught it on her leftmost blade and swept at his face with the other. He turned it aside with a slap of his palm and rammed a heel palm into her chin. She raked a blade across his ribs for it. The world blurred away as they fell upon each other in a flurry of blows. This wasn't a battle, Pyrrha realized. To call it such would be a disgrace. This was a waltz. Cinder was an unstoppable force. Naruto was an unmovable object. Someone had to give, and it wasn't him. Naruto weathered Cinder's assaults with ease, blocking what he could and tanking what he couldn't, ensuring she never got the upper hand. For her part, Cinder proved just as relentless. Ever on the offense, striking out at his exposed legs, flowing around him, seeking the holes in his defenses as she did her ever best to drive her blades home. Their dance deepened, becoming something darker, more primal. She snarled when she missed a strike, and Naruto laughed as he brought a hammer fist crashing down on the back of her head. Coco pumped a fist out. Coco pumped a fist and out a whoop. Now that's how you fight. Kick her ass, Whiskers. Pyrrha wanted to be up there. She wanted to fight with them. He's playing with his food again. I'm sorry. The redhead stole a quick glance at her teammate. What do you mean? Look at him. Emerald took a stray strand of mint-colored hair behind one ear. He's too busy having fun up there. He isn't taking this seriously. See for yourself. She spat on the floor, momentarily alarming her. It's going to be the death of him someday. Cinder took another blow and brought her blades crashing down on Naruto's shield. He took the tack on his arm, then rammed his forehead into hers, sending her tumbling back. When she retreated, he chased her, forcing her on the back foot with quick measured strikes. All the while, he was grinning from ear to ear. A laugh tore from him as she hacked off a huge chunk of his aura, but he kept attacking, forcing her to the very brink of the ring. Blake inhaled sharply. He's got her. It certainly seemed so. Naruto had Cinder on the back foot. He just needed to press the attack. Until quite suddenly, he didn't. He must have seen something they hadn't, because he flung himself backwards. Pyrrha soon saw why. A series of jagged glass-like spikes burst from the space he'd been standing a moment before. One caught him in the ribs, sending him tumbling to the floor. Finally, Cinder ceased her retreat. Once more, her eyes almost seemed to glow for a moment before they dimmed. Are you just going to cower behind those shields of yours? A dark brow rose in challenge. I thought you were braver than that. Naruto merely hummed. Best offense is a good defense, but if you insist. He blurred. Cinder spun, but it was too late. His right hand brushed her bare shoulder, and she hissed as a black mark bloomed there, branded against her flesh. She cut out of him, but he was already gone, slamming his palm into the floor. Another struck the arena, carving a third mark, fourth, fifth, a sixth, and the seventh now, as he trailed his hand across the ground. Eighth. Too late that she realized his intentions. 9. A wave of molten glass cracked at his feet, but he was already gone, already moving, already on her. And for the first time since she'd seen her, Cinder cried out in pain. A litany of cuts blossomed across her arms, leaving her reeling. In a heartbeat, her aura plummeted, hanging just above the red. You said you wouldn't use your semblance. I lied. He shrugged carelessly. What's our weapon too, Cinder? Everything is a weapon, she finished for him, licking a bead of blood from when she bit her lip. I'm familiar with the saying, a man after my own heart. I like that. Emerald absolutely hissed. She's flirting with him. I'll kill her. The words were so soft that Pyrrha thought she'd imagined them at first, but no, they were painfully real. Sorry, Naruto arched an eyebrow. I'm afraid I'm spoken for. Such a shame. Pyrrha felt Emerald preen against her. Not as much as you think, he laughed. She's a keeper. Cinder swept into a different stance, bending low to the ground. Let's see if I can change your mind. Emerald started forward. Pyrrha clamped onto her right arm. Blake grabbed the left. Coco latched onto her waist. "Stop flirting and get on with it already," Adam shouted from the sidelines. "We don't have all day." Pyrrha agreed wholeheartedly. Abruptly, the duel came to an end. Naruto flashed away from Cinder's blades, and the razor edge of his rightmost shield came up under her chin. Her swords alighted on his throat. A moment later, crossed and ready to draw blood, Aura buckled, then broke beneath the force of their simulated strikes. They looked like two animals ready to ravish one another, chest heaving, eyes glazed. Pyrrha's gaze snapped up to the board, alarmed to find their aura well past the red. Scarcely a silver of it remained. "Enough!" Miss Goodwitch snapped. "Both of you, the match is over. Miss Fall, to the infirmary with you." Naruto drew back first, drawing a small shiver from his opponent. Pyrrha frowned at it. That wasn't fear in Cinder's eyes, but something else, an unquestionable emotion, one she wasn't at all familiar with. She looked like she wanted to make a snack of him. Emerald noticed it too, but she hastened to his side as he stepped out of the ring. "You good?" "Yeah," he grinned. "I'm fine." He was fine. Cinder hadn't hurt him at all, so why did Pyrrha have a bad feeling about this? "So, what do you think of him?" "He is adequate." Cinder hummed and spared an indulgent glance over her shoulders as she finished wrapping her right arm in a gauze. "Ah, dear Mercury, always full of questions, always eager to rise above his station, always wanting to know more." She could respect such ambition. He wasn't an idle minion, not by any stretch of the imagination, but he suited her purpose well enough. He was all she had. Thankfully, he was easily placated and easily led by her whims. So long as she had the measure of him, he would never betray her. His gaze slipped to the cuts on her arms, and the marks still burned into her left shoulders. Looks more than adequate to me." Of course he wasn't adequate, she lied. He was so much more than that. He was exemplary, and he would be hers. Mercury's days were numbered. She'd found his replacement. He simply failed to realize it. Such a foolish child. Did he not realize Naruto had held back the lion's share of his strength? He could have broken her if he wanted to. If he'd but willed it, he would have humbled her. Instead, he deceived everyone into thinking it an even fight. Yes, Naruto had certainly restrained himself. Or so she would have believed, were it not for the mark still burned into her shoulder. He'd left it there, an accident perhaps, or was it a warning? One could never be too sure. Why else would two criminals infiltrate Beacon? He and that little minx of his were up to something. They must be. By comparison, her injuries were light. They'd not even scar. She'd felt the strength in his attacks, felt him reel it back in time and again, despite acting like a madman. He'd not wanted to make a scene. That implied a weakness on his part, one she was determined to exploit, so long as their goals didn't conflict with her own, of course. "So that's your plan, boss? Get into their good graces and destroy them from the inside out?" Mercury sounded skeptical, and his expression told her as much. "It doesn't seem to be working." Silly boy. Was that what he thought? Cinder knew better. She had already sown the seeds. "Patience, dear Mercury," she soothed. "In time, they'll play right into our hands. Naruto would be hers. Rather, he already was. He just didn't realize it yet. No doubt he was advancing his own nefarious schemes even now." Sometimes Naruto wondered if his semblance was cursed. That shouldn't be possible, of course. He hadn't stolen another semblance in a long time, and certainly not one based on bad luck. But this felt like it. It was meant to be a simple trip into Bell, a nice way to celebrate their first day. Coco's little bash wouldn't be until next week. He had the distinct feeling alcohol would be involved, but he'd been all too happy to honor Pyrrha's request and take his team into the city after all. Bell was their home now. Best to learn the ins and outs of the city the whole he could, just in case something went wrong. Forewarned meant forearmed after all, and he was nothing if not a sensible sort. So yes, it should have been a nice day out. Unfortunately, fate is seldom so kind, and destiny delights in disaster. And so he found himself roped into another disaster of his own making. A simple excursion. Yeah, not so simple anymore. To think it all stemmed from asking a simple question, a simple desire to help someone. His luck really was the pits these days. Blake groaned. "Why are we doing this again?" "Because Naruto's a softie," Emerald prodded her on. "Keep looking." Pyrrha offered a nervous laugh. "Surely it can't be that hard to find, right, miss?" I know I had it somewhere around here. You're a bit of an odd duck, ain't you? Naruto blew out a sigh as he trailed after the speaker. How the hell did you manage to lose a staff in the middle of a sitting? I'm not a duck. The girl in question wrinkled her nose at him. My name's Amber. I already told you that. A blonde brow rose. Question still stands, missing. I'm a bit clumsy, all right. He kept walking. Noisy girl. Previews. Can his power break the relics? I wonder. Could it slay maidens? Could it destroy the gods themselves? Emerald pushed him back and climbed atop him. I wish I never unlocked this stupid semblance. Atlas would kill Atlas would kill you for it. So would Mistral, as would Vacuo. Even Menagerie would want your gift. I'm nobody's lap rat. Aspen granted him a fatherly smile. Well said. You are so much more than that. Naruto clicked his tongue. I'm not your weapon either. But if you could make this world a world safe for those you love, wouldn't you? I serve a power greater than you could possibly imagine. Good, you're up. Naruto's voice growled just out of sight. Now we can start your history lesson. Long before there were scheming little twits like you, there was the gentleman villain. End of chapter 8.